Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Doghouse. I'm Kelly Duer, Maddie's foster care specialist, and my co-host is Dr. Sheila Segurson, veterinary behaviorist, and the director of research for Maddie's Fund. We are here today. We're talking about marketing pets from foster care. We've got Quinn from HeartSpeak here to speak with us in this 30 to 45-minute meetup. We'll answer questions, listen to solutions, and hoping we'll be able to see some foster dogs too. And Caitlin.
Thank you. So I'll just introduce myself really quickly. I'm Caitlin Quinn. I'm the director of operations for an organization called HeartSpeak. And HeartSpeak's entire mission is to essentially make all things marketing easier for shelters, rescues, fosters. So we have lots of resources on things like photography, best practices for social media, and then tons and tons of design tools and graphics and things like that. So really trying to take the intimidation factor out of marketing, which I think is a really important place to start the conversation probably, is that marketing doesn't have to be anything overly fancy. It doesn't have to be, high production value. It has to just be something that connects with somebody and helps get more pets seen. So I think that is kind of the first thing that I would want to say about marketing foster pets, is that it can be relatively simple and really still very effective.
Awesome. So what are some kinds of things that you guys do and the stuff that you have for foster caregivers?
Some of the things that we have, and we've recently built in even more specific stuff for fosters. The first is a foster photography guide. That really just kind of takes step-by-step 10 steps to taking better photos. So really simple stuff, all meant to be used with a cell phone. So no fancy equipment required, no professional lighting or anything like that. Really just how to use your cell phone the best. And if we were going to distill that into just like 3 really important tips, the first one is just good lighting. And what that really means is try not to be in a room that looks as dark as the one behind me right now. Or, try not to take a photo in front of a window or something like that, because that's when you get animals who look just like they're in a witness protection program. They're all blacked out and the background is very well lit. And when you're outside, there's this misconception that sunlight is a beautiful thing when you're taking a photo, and it is nice, but we actually want to be in the shade, or you want a cloudy day for really beautiful photos. Because just think about when the sun is shining on you directly, you tend to squint, and animals actually tend to squint as well, and their color can get washed out, and it's just never really a flattering photo. So that's one set of resources that we have specific for fosters. Another set of resources that we have are on bio writing. So how to take all of our notes and our thoughts about our foster pet, how we can really, communicate that either through social media or pass along notes to the shelter or rescue in an effective way, and what information to include in that kind of public-facing bio or pet description versus what you would want to send as maybe private notes to the shelter or rescue, or behavior notes and things like that. So we have fill in the blanks and templates and just a lot of tools that are, again, meant to make this whole process really easy, because we all have a lot on our plate, but this doesn't need to feel like more work to market shelter pets.
Awesome. So if you were writing a bio on a pet, like what are the things that you would include in it? And what would you not include?
Great question. So I think the stuff that people really want to hone in on are those real life pet qualities. So what is it like to have this animal in your home? What does a day in the life kind of look like? And I think really zoning in on what makes that animal unique, right? So if we just describe animals as cuddly and cute and adorable, those are wonderful words, but they don't necessarily mean anything. So being able to really get specific about, Sally loves to sun herself on the deck during the day while I work, or likes to be by my feet at the desk while I'm in my Zoom meeting. That kind of just little bit of specificity, I think, really helps people imagine what life would look like with this animal in their own home. And then in terms of information that I wouldn't include is doing a deep dive on things that would be better served talking about in adoption counseling, right? So if Sally is dog selective, that's a term that the general public doesn't know. So if I start throwing in terms about behavior and things like that, there's a good chance that I'm going to lose people or that I'm going to intimidate them. And that's the last thing that we want to do, right? We want more people adopting. We want more people feeling comfortable with shelter and rescue pets. So instead, I might end up talking about that in an adoption counseling session rather than in a bio, if that makes sense. That's a good example.
Yes, absolutely. What can a foster caregiver do to help their rescue or shelter market their foster pet?
That's a great question. So I think the first is just making sure that line of communication to kind of funnel photos and videos that you're taking to the shelter is really important. I think sometimes we get so focused on our day-to-day life as foster caregivers that we forget, especially at this moment in time when we can't necessarily be together or see each other, that those photos and videos are super important to getting those animals into their prospective homes eventually. So really making sure that you're sending content to the shelter is the first key. And I think the other thing is checking in with the shelter if you don't have this information already, but making sure that if you're posting on your own social media channels, if you're posting on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter about your foster pet, making sure that you're tagging that organization or using the hashtags that are associated with that organization so that ultimately that content is searchable and findable, for lack of a better word, for that shelter or rescue. So we don't want it to go out into the world within your own network. We want to make sure that we're sharing it, as far and wide as possible. And part of getting it out there is making sure that the shelter or rescue has access to it. And then I think it is, the taking those photos, making some notes, writing a little bio or a little pet description so that ultimately, especially while we're doing things like remote adoption or curbside adoptions, that kind of thing, that maybe these animals can move pretty quickly into their new home and then you can get a new foster pet and kind of the cycle continues. So I think remembering that the new home is the goal and everything that we can do marketing wise to get them there.
Awesome. Johanna, is it Johanna or Joanna? I can't remember. Sorry.
My God. Johanna.
She's had how many foster pets in the last month? She brings them in. They
they're gone so fast.
She's had 5.
I do have a question. So I know the goal is to find them a home as quickly as you can. If you take in a foster pet that's going through health issues and you're going to have them for a while, like I had Alien, I did post on him, but I never mentioned adoption, but people were following him already, and once he was released for adoption, it didn't even take a week. Right. So do you recommend still posting about them, even if it's going to be a month or two down the road before they're available?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the perfect way to handle that. And it kind of serves two purposes. One is you're kind of following them in that journey of recovery, if they're recovering from a medical situation, which is very valuable to see that kind of progress and that before and after, and really speaks to how important fostering is. And then I think you're also, keeping people in the loop, getting people kind of excited so that exactly as you said, by the time they're ready for adoption, it can kind of be a very quick process because they probably feel like they know, people who are following that story, they feel connected to that animal at that point because they've been following the story.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel silly asking this question, but I don't know the answer, so I'm asking it. What's the difference between a Facebook story and a Facebook regular post? And when should you use stories? When should you use the regular posts?
That's not a silly question at all, actually. It's a great question. So stories are, when you're on mobile, they pop up right at the top of your app. And when you're using Facebook on desktop, they also are a little bit harder to see sometimes, but they're right at the top usually of the news feed. Similar to Instagram stories, they kind of appear in a little bubble, and they only exist for a 24-hour period, and they kind of show up on the screen for a very limited amount of time. I'm totally guilty of when Facebook stories first came out. I was like, this is not going to last. Like, they'll move on past Facebook stories. But there's currently, I think I was reading the other day, there's about 3 million people who are using Facebook stories regularly. So it's definitely not going anywhere. But the difference between that content is, again, the lifespan of it. So this is only lasting for 24 hours and then it's disappearing. Whereas a Facebook newsfeed post goes straight onto your page if you're running your personal page or shelter or rescue page, and shows up, as people are scrolling through on their phones, shows up in that news feed, and lasts forever. It's searchable. It's on that page forever unless it's deleted. The way that Facebook stories and Facebook posts can work really nicely, especially in conjunction with each other, is, let's say you post about your foster pet and you just pick maybe your favorite video clip or a couple, 2 photos that were really stunning, but you have a couple of other, fun pieces of content, like a really quick video clip or maybe a more informal photo, of just like hanging out with the foster pet. That kind of informal content is great for stories, and really can catch people's eye and ultimately send them to your newsfeed post where they could learn more. So those 2 pieces of content can kind of feed into each other a little bit, because ultimately sometimes people may miss your post in the feed, but they may see it in the stories and vice versa. Different people use Facebook in different ways. And so it's just another way to capture someone's attention and have a few more options of having more people see that foster pet.
Thank you.
If somebody wants to take pictures of their foster pet at home, like what would you recommend they do?
Yeah.
Like what are the things that like help to take a good picture?
Yeah, so a couple of the things that we recommend are not like letting yourself off the hook and not overthinking it. Like you don't need to set up a backdrop. You don't have to, you don't have to cover anything in blankets or anything like that. I think that it's valuable for people to see foster pets in a home environment, especially right now while we've moved so many animals who previously would have only been seen in a shelter environment are now in homes. And that's really incredibly valuable to see animals in that kind of different setting. So don't feel like you have to set up any kind of special circumstances. And really the magic of foster photos often happen kind of on the fly, right? They're doing something cute and we want to capture that. The simple things to just pay attention to, if you're not doing kind of a intentional, like I'm going to take a photo of this pet right now, let me consider, my backdrop and where the light is and stuff. If this is something that's more informal, the animal's doing something adorable and I want to take a quick photo, the things that you want to just check for really quickly are what direction is the light coming from. So again, if the light is right behind that pet, you want to just angle your body so that the light is more coming from the side, like the way that this light is coming to my side right now, or coming directly at their face. So that's just something you can really quickly kind of scan the situation. If you're not sure where light is coming from, you can always hold your hand in front of you like this, and you'll see the light in real time on your hand. And that you can kind of pretend is the face of the animal. That's a really quick kind of tip for being able to check light. And the other big important thing, I think, is just making sure the background isn't super cluttered. So typically, even if it's an on-the-fly kind of informal moment, you can quickly scan the room and say like, oh, I left dog toys and my flip-flops are right in this corner. And if I just angle my body slightly this way, I can cut that kind of stuff out of the photo. And it's simply just for the purposes of limiting distraction. We want that animal to be the full focus of that image. We just don't want to get distracted by extra stuff in the photo. And the other thing that I think is really important and very easy to do is remembering that simply by getting on the animal's level, we can completely change the way that the photo looks. So often if something's happening, especially kind of in the moment or on the fly, we take out our phones and we tend to just tap and shoot down. And what we can do is simply, move our hands down this way and try to get that photo more on the animal's level. And it just completely changes, A, what's in the background, B, how that animal looks and how we're able to tell their size and a little bit more about them. Because if we take all the photos from above the animal, they tend to look smaller than they actually are. And then we also tend to get more engagement, more eye contact from the animal when we're kind of taking it from a little bit lower down on their level. So those would be I think those are the biggest things that can, just teeny tiny adjustments that could make a really big difference.
If you're working in a shelter and you want your fosters to contribute more marketing material, how can you encourage people to post more photos and send you more marketing material?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think some of it just is in making that process easy, right? So if people have to hunt down your email address, or if there's any barriers in place to getting that content to you, I think that tends to be the thing that keeps people from sending us content, because they just go, oh, I'll send this later, and then they forget. So if you're able to have, or you already have, a foster Facebook group, someplace where it's really easy to just send photos from your phone, because that's where most of these photos are coming from. That's one kind of easy path to collecting that kind of content. The other is just making sure that you set up some kind of either Dropbox or Google Drive, someplace where it's, again, just super easy for people to drop that content and for you to, again, just kind of be able to pick it up when they put it there. So really just making those lines of communication a little bit more open, I think, is a big one. And the other thing that I think gets overlooked sometimes is not making the assumption that fosters would already know, how to tag you on different social media platforms, or how what hashtags you use related to your brand. If you want people to really feel comfortable and welcomed in sharing that kind of content, I think you just have to make sure that they know where to find you and what your preferred method of receiving that kind of stuff. And I think then, the tagging, so that they're sharing their own stuff, but you're also kind of getting looped in as the shelter. There was just a shelter that had a really amazing TikTok video that was going pretty viral. Someone had, I can't remember which shelter it was now, but
hey, I missed it.
There was a couple that was supposed to get married, and their wedding was canceled, and instead they went and got a kitten to foster from the shelter.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, it was this amazing story. But they had talked about the shelter in the TikTok video. But if they as the fostering organization had made it a little bit clearer how they could be tagged, in that interaction, then the shelter would have benefited even more from that. So it was nice to get the shout out, but being able to get a tag and then be able to share it on their own account would have been even more valuable at that point. So that's just kind of an example of just not making assumptions, essentially, that people know how to get you that information or know how to tag you on social media.
That's a really good point. Yeah, not everybody does.
No. Or sometimes organizations have multiple. It's hard, like if you search some shelters, like sometimes there's on Instagram, I see this a lot, like a volunteer might have set up an account, and there's an account for different branches of the shelter. So just, clarifying, like, this is our official account, this is how we want to be tagged so that we can share that content.
That's a really good plan. Yeah. If you had, say you have a foster dog or a dog that you're promoting, what are your what are your go-to thing? Like if you have anything that almost always works, you know what I mean? Just any tips
for a bio?
I mean, for bios, or for marketing, photos, any kind of marketing.
Yeah, that's such a good question. that I have to think about a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, I think one of my favorite right now is tossing a treat and then catching it and doing like the slow-mo, because I have the derpiest foster on earth and he misses every time, but he tries so hard and it's hilarious.
That's really adorable. I am a big fan of any kind of slow-mo video, especially I had a foster who was very jowly. He had a lot of extra.
Yes.
So when we would give him peanut butter, he was on medication, so we were giving him peanut butter on a spoon, and slow-mo video of his face eating peanut butter was just kind of magical. And I think
That's
like what you're
amazing.
hitting, what you're hitting on and what I'm hitting on are these really teeny tiny moments, like that are just, if it's bringing you joy about that animal while they're in your care, then it's probably going to bring other people joy. And I think it doesn't have to be anything too crazy. Like they don't have to do like an obstacle course in your yard. They can just be being regular everyday pets doing something really adorable. I had a foster who loved to offer shake, like no matter what you're doing, he just always offered to shake your hand no matter what you're doing. So we took a lot of clips of him doing that, and that spoke about him as an individual animal, was really, really adorable behavior. And was just something that would catch people's attention so that then we could, fill them in on a little bit more information that we had learned about him in that time. So I think just those small moments are sometimes the really most magical ones.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. What moments have the rest of you guys, like anything off the top of your head that has been like a really cool moment? You can type it in the chat or say it. Either one.
I don't have a moment, but I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm trying to find a home for a pet who is a more challenging dog to place, and I know it's going to take a while for me to find him a home, we talked about that you should start posting early on, but do you have recommendations in terms of how often I should be posting about that dog?
That's a really great question. So I think in those cases where either medically or behaviorally that you have an animal who's going to be around a lot, I think posting, every day, every other day, like some kind of consistency is really good and really important, I think, because it helps people, especially if there's any kind of recovery involved, it helps people really kind of see how quickly that's progressing. For the challenging dogs, I think it's an opportunity at that point to share different facets of their personality. Because if they're challenging for whatever reason, we know that there's already kind of a stumbling block in their way that may hold them back a little bit, which makes it even more important, I would think, at that point, to be able to show that they have a lot of other sides. So if it's something behaviorally that is going to limit the pool of adopters, still having that audience be able to see that they are so much more than whatever that behavior is, that there are a lot of other things happening. So, and that at that point, I also would encourage you to, mix it up between not just photos, but also video. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that people connect even a little bit more, and maybe especially with animals who are going to have, some kind of challenge standing in their way, that there's a little bit more to connect with in a video, because you can see them moving around, you can see a little bit more of their behavior or what they're doing in that moment. And so I think video can be really magical for those animals who just need a little bit more of a boost, a little bit more spotlight shown on them.
And
Yeah.
so to follow up on that a little bit, so that's if I have one organization, but what if my organization has 20 dogs that I know are more challenging to place, and I don't know whether it's good to post all 20 of those dogs every day or every other day, or so what's the strategy when you have a whole group of dogs?
Yes, I thought you were asking as a foster.
I was asking as a foster, but then it made me think.
No, but I'm glad you
picture.
clarified, because for organizations, I definitely wouldn't post every day about the same animal. So I would like to make sure that I say that. I think that, so there was a shelter that I was working with about a year ago that had a long stay dog, and they decided to post an entire week of content around that dog. And their thinking was, it'll just be a week dedicated to him. He'll get so many eyes on him that everyone will want to adopt him at some point. And after 7 days of this dog, he still didn't get adopted. And I think what happens at that point is people are asking more questions than paying attention to the individual animal, right? It becomes about, well, why is he there so long? And there must be a reason, and blah, blah, blah. So I think at that point, even if you have an organization that has many different animals, the diversity of content is really important. And there's nothing wrong with showing an animal 1 week, and then the next week, you have another post about them. And depending on your organization's structure and the urgency of that situation, I think it's really important to share that animal at a frequency that, aligns with the organization's policies and procedures at that point. But I think if you have 20 dogs, to use that example, of all of whom are kind of experiencing this longer length of stay or what have you, they're having more challenges, then I think it's also an opportunity to look at them as is there an opportunity for some group promotion? Like, do they have things in common, so that it's not like every day a different animal is being posted and you're saying, he's been here for this long. And I think when that starts to happen, then it becomes more about the questions that people have and not about the individual animals. So I would say diversity of content, being able to maybe talk about them as a group if you're having an adoption special on the organizational side of things, and not overdoing it with the posts, because I think that, again, that becomes a distraction from the actual marketing of that individual animal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. This
Yes.
is Neha. I'm
Hi.
from Doghouse. So I do have an Instagram account and also a Facebook account for my fosters. But my struggle is to reach to newer audience. I feel like I get a lot of response for my followers, or like the dog followers, not my followers, the dog followers, and they interact with in the post. They'll like and comment and whatnot. But I don't see like newer people coming in and checking the post. Like, obviously, the goal is to reach more people so that they look at the dog and adopt them. And another question is that we do post a lot on our Facebook group, and there's lots of people commenting on those posts, but when we post on the main page, I don't see as much interaction. The main page has like 40,000 people or 50,000 people following, but I still see that there are like as many, only 100 or 200 likes and then 10 comments. Whereas when we post on the local or our group site, you get like hundreds of likes and like comments, like 20 to 30 comments. So I don't know, should I just send it to the marketing team before I post it on the Facebook group? Because for me, it's more easy to post on the Facebook group, right? So
Right.
I guess I know it's two-part questions. One is like, how do I reach new people? And then how do we get more interaction when we market?
Yeah, I'll start with your first question. So I think for Instagram, you said Instagram and Facebook are what you're using, right? For
and Twitter, I just post from Instagram to Twitter, but I don't think it's working very well. So I guess I have to repost on Twitter freshly instead of posting it from Instagram.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's better to kind of have that content be specific to the platform. Sometimes when you share it, across from one platform to another, the platforms are kind of different in terms of what they prioritize. And so it could be that just kind of blanket share is what is holding back some of the reach. On Twitter and on Instagram, it's really important to look at the hashtags that you're using in terms of reaching new audience members. And I think one thing that I find really important about the use of both of those tools is using hashtags that are popular is great. But if you're using only hashtags that have millions of uses and millions of followers, so if we use just the hashtag adopt a pet, that has a lot of interaction, but it's global in nature. And so you need to use those kind of hashtags alongside hashtags that are maybe specific to your area. Because it's all well and good if you have a lot of interactions on a post, but if all of those interactions are from people who don't necessarily live in your community or aren't able to take action or ultimately become an adopter of that animal, then those likes and those comments become a little bit less valuable, just in terms of, is this just about the performance of the post, or is this about getting the animal into a home? So make sure that you're kind of diversifying your hashtags between things that are related to your local community. And you can do some quick searches to kind of find out if there are location-based hashtags for your city or your town or even your state, if you're able to kind of widen your adoption circle, and use those alongside some of those well-performing hashtags and some of those ones that get millions of uses. The other thing to do is use the location, like geotagging, which is listing a location. Again, that just gets more specific about your location and zeroes in on people, again, that are in your area. And the other kind of follow-up question I have for you is, are you creating a new account for every foster when you have a new foster?
I just have one account, and it
good.
just rotates for fosters. And I give each foster a hashtag, so they get a new hashtag, so that they can click on that hashtag and see all the history.
Perfect. That's awesome. Because that was going to be my only question, is sometimes it's really good to have a specific account for a specific foster, maybe one that needs a little extra attention, but just realize that then you're stuck with building an audience from the ground up at that point. So it's wonderful that you have an existing kind of audience. And I think that, between hashtags and realizing some of the rules of Facebook, which we probably don't have enough time to go into all of the algorithm particulars, but just realize that, in the briefest of ways, like make sure that you're using always a photo or video, which it sounds like you are doing, and take a look just at your posts that are the most successful. See if there is a time of day that seems to be a little bit more popular. See what kind of content the people who are already following you seem to respond to the most, because that kind of responsive content is usually what causes people to share. So take a look at your post that has, let's say, the top 3 most shares, because those shares are how you widen that following. That's how you kind of get that drop a pebble and you get that ripple effect, really comes on Facebook through the sharing mechanism. And so you need to kind of take a look at what it looks like people who are following you are responding to, so that you can maybe give them a little bit more of that kind of content of your fosters, in the hopes that they will then share it to a wider network. And that's how you ultimately grow that base a little bit, in the simplest of terms. Tell me again your second question.
Yeah, so the second question was, we have a volunteer Facebook group, right? So I can post there. So whenever I post there, I feel like I get a lot of response from the fellow volunteers, right?
Right.
But then the marketing team might take the same picture or the same video and post on the actual site, which is the actual Facebook group for the rescue. And I mean, the interaction, I would think that it should be like a lot more, because the audience is
right.
Right. So
some of that comes down to how Facebook works in the very briefest explanation. So in your group, I think the reason that you're getting lots of response is because it's a built-in audience of people who really, really are invested and who care, because they're already volunteers and fosters, and groups tend to be a little bit more informal as well. And really importantly, the content that gets put in groups is not subject to the same algorithm constraints as content that goes into the feed of Facebook, especially for pages, which are different than personal accounts on Facebook. Pages are subject to a lot of limitations based on Facebook's algorithm. So, it has everything to do with, it has so many different factors that decide essentially how a post performs. And it could be time of day, it could be any number of things. And some of it is really arbitrary. Like, you can post a really wonderful video on a Tuesday at 7 p.m. and maybe it gets a ton of content, and you could do exactly the same thing the following week and it might get nothing, because there's a little bit of a rolling of the dice, so to speak, that happens with Facebook's algorithm to some degree. So just realize that part of why you're seeing that difference in engagement is just the function of those two pieces of Facebook are very, very different. The other thing is, for pages that have 40,000 followers or 60,000 followers, it's not a guarantee that when you post something that all of those people are going to see it. Usually just a tiny fraction of your actual followers see things in the news feed, which is why, maybe in that volunteer group that you have, you could encourage people to go to those public posts and do things like comment and like and share them, because those kinds of interactions are going to increase the value of those posts on the public page, and that's what will help it get seen by more people. So I hope that kind of helps explain why you might be seeing some of that difference.
It's tough. It's actually, it is a little better than it used to be, but it's kind of like almost like training everybody to kind of go to the main page, and interact with it. And I think everybody knows each other on the volunteer page too, so it's like easier to,
Yeah. And
it's
people,
so public.
exactly. Like, I'll comment in a group, like my own personality, I'm pretty introverted, even on the internet. So I'll comment in a group where I feel a little bit more comfortable, whereas I might be a little bit more passive on a public page and not necessarily say something.
Totally.
Yeah. But that's one way to game the system and the algorithm, is to have your staff and your volunteers and your fosters go interact with that public post, because essentially, like, if we were to distill the algorithm into its simplest form, it tries to predict what people will want to see based on what is already popular. And so by making those posts more popular, we then increase the value of future posts that page will make.
So Facebook boosts, right? So, and also Instagram boosts. Is there a strategy how to use those? Because I did use those for my foster page, for my page, and also Instagram. I don't see a whole lot of, after that, I would expect like a lot of emails for the fosters, but I get a lot of likes and comments and such things. But what is the strategy for that?
Yeah, so I'll say something really quickly, and then I think, Kelly, you have some theories and info on boosting too that I feel like I've seen you talk about before. But what I'll say really quickly is just my personal strategy with boosting, and what I've seen work for some of the shelters that I work with, is not boosting a post until it has time to perform organically, right? So sometimes we have a tendency to boost posts right away because it's content that we already know we want a lot of people to see it. And I don't know, I manage all of our social media for Heartspeak. And so if you're like me, then you're like watching that post sometimes. And if it doesn't seem to be getting the interaction that you want, sometimes the temptation is to boost it so that you start to see some of that interaction. What I have read and kind of seen be more successful with boosts is that you want to give it a little bit of time to perform organically, meaning don't boost it right away. Let it get out there, see if it's working. Because if it's falling completely flat, you might want to post a different piece of content about that animal. And if that's more successful, boost that post. Because if it's getting good organic reach, then there's something natural about it that people are drawn to. And so that boost is going to take you farther, reach more people, and potentially have more quality interaction rather than just the likes and the comments that you tend to get that, again, don't really end up getting you any of those applications or emails and things that you're looking for. So if you think about it the same way we were just talking about hashtags, like going for the biggest bang of interaction doesn't always mean quality interaction. And I think that's a really important distinction.
Yeah, but I think you're right. Like it's a lot more worthwhile if it's a post that, you know, is organically doing well. I mean, I think that your money goes a lot further.
Yeah.
So I'd have to agree with that. I also like to boost, depending on the animal. Like if it's Oreo, I think he has separation anxiety. I can't remember if he was like
he
barking.
does. He
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
So I might like boost him to like Leesburg because, you know, they're going to have more single family homes, and as opposed to like Arlington, you know, depending on the animal and their needs. But
that's so smart. That's such a good thing to mention. Like how you segment that audience for a boost is really, really important. And that's like what you're tapping into, like knowing a little bit about your area is so key. That's a really great point.
Yeah. It's been interesting because Lost Dog has, their area is mostly like Arlington in toward like really close suburbs of DC. So there's a lot of, everybody's living in really close together.
Right.
So we've been trying to kind of boost to like out so that some of our behavior dogs have a, you know,
more space.
Yeah. So you guys have more questions? Oh yeah, Ronnie. Oh yeah. Would it make more sense for Snehad to email us content for Oreo? I think that a lot of active people on the volunteer page follow the main page, but if they see the post before it gets put on the main page, then those people might not comment on it twice. I think that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it happened. I think we unwittingly kind of shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes by posting on the volunteer page first.
Yeah.
The volunteer page, usually they're private, but the one that we're talking about, it's public. And so then people share from that page, but then main page doesn't get, you know.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference. If they're both public pages, then I definitely would try to have it always originate, you know, on the main page to get that kind of interaction.
Yeah. I think it'll go way further.
Yeah. And it'll boost all your future posts. Like if some of that interaction starts to migrate to the main page, then there's just you kind of get into that cycle of more good stuff happening there means more good stuff will continue to happen.
Totally. Well, it's about 8:45, and I really, really appreciate you coming and chatting with us, Caitlin.
Oh, I'm so happy to do it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thank you guys for coming and being with us. And we really have a good night, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Good
Take
night.
care, everybody.